it seems that the game is hopeless, rearrange some things for a dose of dopeness. I do what I do, and I do what I do, and just when it
Next
seems
up
that the game is
on the United We Strike Marathon for April 13th, 2013, we have Christina Consolo, also known as Rad Chick, going to give us the global radiation update. Christina, please tell me I said your name right, and take it away.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you said it fine. I have a show on UCY TV called Nuked Radio, which airs Tuesdays and Thursdays live from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I started the show a little over a year ago to cover the ongoing nuclear disaster at the Fukushima plant in Japan. Many people don't know that all of our lives changed when that accident happened. And last month was my first appearance on United We Strike, where I talked about the current status of the plant. You can find that on YouTube under Global Radiation Update on Rad Chick's channel. Today, though, I'd like to talk about mutations, Mexico, and some recent stories from China, England, and the U.S. Mutations occur in plants and animals and people when their DNA is disrupted, and this is usually caused by an environmental factor. And nothing disrupts DNA like radiation. Now, this is nothing new. We've known this since the 1920s, when Dr. Mueller, who won the Nobel Prize for his research, did his famous fruit fly experiments. Fruit flies breed at a rate far faster than humans, so they are an excellent way to study DNA damage to subsequent generations, since many generations can be observed over a short period of time. And I've always been interested in mutations because I worked in clinical research, and because I used to be an avid gardener, and I always looked for them in the natural world. But outside of a zoo or a botanical garden, where these rare specimens are sometimes displayed, I never really saw any until July of 2011. That was 4 months after the Fukushima disaster, and I started seeing mutations in young oak trees and mushrooms. I photographed them as I live in the Midwest of the United States, and I started researching how nuclear fallout might be contributing to this. I came across some research from a woman who lived near the 3 Mile Island accident, which occurred in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on March 28th of 1979. Her name is Mary Osborne, and she began photographing mutations in dandelions, flowers, produce, farm animals, birds, insects, spiders, and you can review her images at 3 Mile Island Alerts, including the famous two-headed cow. I created a Facebook page called Mutation Watch, where I shared not only my images, but Mary's images, Chernobyl images, and I encouraged people to post anything that they found that they considered unusual on this Facebook page. At first, we had a few dozen submissions from mostly the West Coast and Japan. But when the growing season started in 2012, we received hundreds and hundreds of images from all across the United States, Canada, and Europe. The people that were sending me these images were gardeners, farmers, photographers, people who observe nature on a regular basis and know when something isn't right. From the conversations that I've had with Mary Osborne, who I call the mutation lady of 3 Mile Island, we have a much larger concern than just mutated plants, because Mary kept meticulous records of her finds, and in addition to photographing them, she plotted them on a map. And now, 30 years after the 3 Mile Island accident, Mary has also plotted cancers in her community. And what she discovered when she put these two maps together is every yard, every farm, every garden where she photographed these mutations, someone in that household got cancer, sometimes several people. Cancer, however, is usually later in the game. There are many, many other profound ways that radiation can affect our body. Immune system problems, bleeding issues, brain damage, reproduction issues, not to mention DNA damage to subsequent generations. And we've already had radiation in our environment from atmospheric testing, continuous emissions from nuke plants, numerous nuke plant and weapons labs accidents, which on my last count totaled 99, not the 3 or 4 that most people know of, and the use of depleted uranium as a weapon of war, which has also been carried by wind and weather into storm systems, which is then deposited in countries far from where it was used. This added exposure now from Fukushima may be what tips our health over the edge. In sorting through all these mutation images, including some from the southern hemisphere, there was a big gap in my data, and that was Mexico and Central America. From the fallout studies and simulations by the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization, or RIVA, and RIU in Europe, I knew fallout had landed there, and last week I actually took a trip to Mexico with my family. And from the moment we walked out of the airport in Cancun, I saw evidence that it has affected plants there as well. These mutations were also observed 20 miles away in Playa del Carmen and 25 miles away in Maya Riviera. Although it appears that plants and palms have been sickened from possible fallout, one noticeable difference in the population was that the people that live there all appear quite healthy, which I would attribute to their diet because they eat a lot of fruit, vegetables, whole foods, very little processed food, no fast food. They make free time, hobbies, sports like soccer a big priority of their life. Therefore, they have a lot less stress. If your body's in a weakened state, more stress, less sleep, poor diet, you will be more profoundly affected by radiation in your environment. Now, a recent news story from China, published on NBC News yesterday, stated the following. On the heels of recent news about a two-headed bull shark, a two-headed pig has been born in a village in East China's province, according to news reports. The photo shows a pig with 2 snouts, 2 ears, and what appears to be a shared eye. A local vet told the AFP news agency the animal is suffering a deformity and is unlikely to survive. The deformity may be the same condition called axial bifurcation that researchers determined was the cause of a two-headed bull shark in a study published this March in the Journal of Fish Biology. It results from an embryo splitting into 2 separate organisms or twins, but the process is incomplete. Halfway through the process of forming twins, the embryo stops dividing. Michael Wagner, a researcher at Michigan State University, told Live Science. The mutation, he added, occurs across animals, including humans. While rare, in addition to the pig shown here and the shark, two-headed turtles, snakes, kittens, and other critters have been reported in recent years. In addition to these ongoing uncontained releases from Fukushima, which there is no technology to mitigate or shut off, it has to be invented, and all the nuclear plants worldwide, we also have a legacy of waste and contamination that needs to be dealt with. Just this week, another story from RT, published yesterday, nuclear waste barrels remain strewn across the floor of the English Channel. German journalists have found barrels of radioactive waste in an underwater valley in the English Channel, which were dumped there half a century ago. Politicians in Germany have called for the potentially harmful containers to be removed. 28,000 containers of low-level radioactive waste were dumped into the English Channel by the British and Belgians between 1950 and 1963. Most of them were sunk in an underwater channel near the island of Alderney, known as Herd's Deep. Several barrels were found by a team of the joint Franco-German public broadcaster Arte in an investigative report set to air later in April. As part of the investigation, the German public broadcaster SWR sent an unmanned remote-controlled submarine into the channel's depths. The team discovered 2 barrels just 124 meters deep, a few kilometers from the French coast. Experts had assumed that the sea had rusted open the barrels and the contents had dissipated throughout the ocean, thus making the hazard innocuous. According to the International Atomic Energy Authority, or IAEA, the containers hold an estimated 17,000 metric tons of low-level radioactive waste. The British barrels are estimated to contain the equivalent to 58 trillion becquerels, or units of radioactivity, while the Belgian barrels are thought to hold 2.4 trillion becquerels. The European Union's limit for drinking water is 10 becquerels per liter. We think that there are still many more undamaged barrels below. Thomas Reuter, an SWR journalist, told Spiegel Online. He added that it was likely there were other containers that the expedition hadn't located. And there's a PDF online from the IAEA where you can actually look at a map and see all the places in all the oceans worldwide where we have dumped not only nuclear waste, but we have sunk nuclear submarines. Russia alone sunk between 8 and 10 in the Arctic Sea. We have sunken subs all along the east coast of the United States. We have numerous waste dumps, including one right off the Canary Islands near El Hierro, which many of you probably know has been known for some of its recent earthquake and volcanic activity. And closer to home for me, in the U.S., although this was published in RT, irreparable safety issues, all U.S. nuclear plants should be replaced. Band-Aids won't help. This was published April 9th of 2013. All 104 nuclear reactors currently operational in the U.S. have irreparable safety issues and should be taken out of commission and replaced, former chairman of the U.S. NRC, Gregory Jaczko, said. Comments made during the Carnegie International Nuclear Policy Conference are highly unusual for a current or former member of the Safety Commission, according to the New York Times. Asked why he had suddenly decided to make the remarks, Jaczko implied that he'd only recently arrived at these conclusions following the serious aftermath of Japan's tsunami-stricken Fukushima Daiichi nuclear facility. I was just thinking about the issues more, and watching as the industry and the regulators and the whole nuclear safety community continues to try to figure out how to address these very, very difficult problems, which were made more evident by the 2011 Fukushima nuclear accident in Japan. Continuing to put a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid is not going to fix the problem. According to the former chairman, U.S. reactors that received permission from the Nuclear Commission to operate for an additional 20 years past their initial 40-year licenses would not likely last long. He further rejected the Commission's proposal for a second 20-year extension, which would leave some American nuclear reactors operating for some 80 years. Jaczko's comments are quite significant as the U.S. faces a mass retirement of its reactors, and nuclear policy largely revolves around maintaining existing facilities, rather than attempting to go through the politically hazardous process of financing and breaking ground on new plants. Though the U.S. maintains a massive naval nuclear program, all of the country's current civilian reactors began construction in 1974 or earlier, some much earlier, and a serious incident at the 3 Mile Island facility in 1979, along with an economic recession, essentially caused new projects to be scrapped. A modest revival of enthusiasm for nuclear power emerged in the early part of the last decade, leading to the construction of 4 reactors at existing facilities within the last 3 years, slated to be completed by 2020. Despite the lack of new projects, the U.S. is still the world's biggest producer of nuclear power, which represents only 19% of its total electrical output. Fittingly, Jaczko's comments came during a panel discussion of the Fukushima incident, which has brought greater attention to aging U.S. reactors, some of which were quite similar to the General Electric design models overwhelmed by the earthquake and subsequent tsunami in 2011. In response to those comments, Marvin Fertel, president and chief executive of the Nuclear Energy Institute, told the Times that the country's nuclear power grid is, and will operate safely. Although you can go to the NRC event notification page any day of the week and see not only problems with some of the machinery at the plants, but some of the cooling pools, some of the diesel generators, some of the emergency sirens, and a couple times a month they find a employee who doesn't pass their drug or alcohol test. We still have humans running these machines, running these reactors, and these reactors are old. There's 10,000 parts in a nuclear reactor, and the NRC doesn't like to fix anything until it breaks. Jaczko served as chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Agency since 2009, and according to the Times, resigned in 2012 following conflicts with colleagues. He was seen as an outlying vote on a number of safety issues and had advocated for more stringent safety improvements during his tenure. And for some reason, that made him quite unpopular with his coworkers. Now, I recently did a series of interviews with atmospheric fallout expert and former Lawrence Livermore lab worker turned whistleblower Loren Murray, and I want to invite the listeners to check these out on YouTube. There are 6 parts to the 2 years of Fukushima with Loren Murray. One is an overview of the current situation and how we can equate what happened at Fukushima to 300 Chernobyls. There's a section on atmospheric fallout and how to avoid it. There's a section on what nuclear radiation will do to developing embryos in each stage of a person's pregnancy. There is also a section of probably the most popular section, part 4, which is the mutation section, where I included probably 60 to 70 images that were sent to me from mostly the United States and Canada. I think only 2 were from Japan. And if you want to see what mutated flowers and produce and animals and butterflies look like, check out that video. We also did a section on atmospheric fallout and what we learned from nuclear testing. And we included a section that's completely on mitigation and diet and how to live healthy in an environment where we're being exposed to radiation. Now, for people who maybe don't pay attention to the nuclear issues but will pay attention to what's in People magazine, we recently did an interview called Nuked in the Skies, where we had 10 celebrities that within the last 2 months, most of them within the last 2 months, have either had seizures on planes or had to been hospitalized after a transatlantic or transcontinental flight, or have had thyroid cancer or other health issues. Some of these celebrities include Kim Kardashian, Lil Wayne, Kelly Osbourne, Jessica Alba, Gwyneth Paltrow, Justin Bieber, Morrissey, a couple of singers from the UK, and we document exactly when they flew. And I found out from people who have watched these videos that several of them have been to Japan within the last year. Some of them are under 30 and experiencing symptoms of stroke and neuromuscular problems and possible brain damage. So you can check out those videos also on YouTube. The reason these people are the canaries in the coal mine, so to speak, is because they're flying a lot. And radiation levels up in the air are much higher than they are on the ground. In fact, atmospheric testing or fallout, nuclear fallout from atmospheric testing, there's still 85% of it existing in our upper atmosphere. Now, the makers of a very popular Geiger counter called the Inspector EXP, this company is called Medcom, they state on their website that at 30,000 feet, it's normal to have radiation levels of 200 counts per minute. When I flew to Mexico on April 1st, I was getting 1,400 counts per minute over a duration of 3 hours. That is extraordinarily high. We also talk about some recent cases of pilots that have passed out in mid-flight, of pilots, stewards, stewardesses, and other crew members who have been losing hair, having bleeding issues, having skin issues. In fact, there were hundreds of them that were exhibiting these issues this past summer from Alaskan Air. I was informed today that there were actually more flights where pilots passed out in Nevada and Oregon recently that I didn't know about. Loren also talks about sickness and radiation in Hawaii. Now, Hawaii has some extraordinary problems because of their proximity to Fukushima. The ocean contamination is an issue. The testing that has been done on islands around or upwind of Hawaii is an issue, and depleted uranium being used on firing ranges in Hawaii is also an issue. And I included an interview that she did with KABC TV in Honolulu on a trip there a few years ago, where she is measuring high radiation levels downwind of an army base. We also include some interesting pictures of mutated pineapples. And all of this has happened before in terms of celebrities. John Wayne and the entire cast of The Conqueror suffered from an epidemic of cancer. Out of 212 people that worked on the movie set, 90 of them developed cancer, including the two top stars, John Wayne and Susan Hayward.
Christina, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do have to let you know that we're coming up on the end of your segment, so you've got about a minute left to summarize and maybe do some blatant self-promotion.
Okay. So check out those videos, and for anyone who lives in the Los Angeles area, make sure you check out Simi Valley and the Sins of Rocketdyne. Nuked Radio airs on Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'll be appearing on Wide Awake News with Charlie McGrath on April 18th, which I always enjoy. I want to thank Karen and Gary and everyone, because it is such a privilege to be on this program with such a wonderful lineup of people, sharing the information that people really need to know. One of the best things that me and my family have ever done is get rid of our television set. We share love, caring, and concern for your fellow man, and that way, regardless of the outcome of all of this, it will be okay.
And I tried to tell my mother, but she ain't under there, figure me on some other. But see, my mommy ain't a fronter, so nowadays she call me a bad motherfucker. And just when it seems that the game is hopeless, rearrange some things for a dose of dopeness. I do, oh what I do, and I do, oh what I do. And just when it seems that the game is hopeless, rearrange some things for a dose of dopeness. I do, oh what I do, and I do, oh what I do. Do my little dance.